I never thought much about my neighbors. In a city like Chicago, people come and go, keeping to themselves. But sometimes, you notice things. Small, unsettling things that don't make sense at first. It started with the crying. Not the usual muffled arguments or late-night TV sounds that seep through thin apartment walls. No, this was different. It was raw, desperate, like someone was trying to scream but didn't have the strength. I first heard it around 2 a.m. while lying in bed, scrolling through my phone, half asleep. The sound made my skin crawl. It wasn't just sadness. It was suffering. I sat up, heart pounding. It was coming from the apartment next door. I never really paid attention to who lived there. The guy was quiet, kept to himself. But now that I thought about it, something about him had always felt off. I couldn't recall ever seeing him with visitors. No packages, no deliveries. Nothing. Just a man in his late 30s, pale and lanky, wearing the same gray hoodie every time I caught a glimpse of him. The next night, the crying came again. This time, I pressed my ear to the wall. The sound was closer, as if someone was right on, the other side whispering in pain. My stomach twisted. Then, just as suddenly as it started, it stopped. Silence, a suffocating, unnatural silence that made my apartment feel colder. I told myself it was none of my business. Maybe he was watching some disturbing movie, maybe he was just weird. People are weird. But deep down, I knew that wasn't it. And then, the smell came. It was faint at first, a rotten, sickly sweet stench drifting through the air vents. By the third night, it was unbearable, like something was decomposing. That's when I realized something was very, very wrong, but nothing could have prepared me for what I was about to discover. The smell got worse. It clung to my clothes, seeped into my pillows, made my stomach churn every time I breathed in. It wasn't just rot. It was something deeper, something sick. I had to do something. That night, I stood outside his door, my knuckles inches from knocking. My gut screamed at me to walk away, to pretend I never heard the cries, never smelled the decay creeping through the vents. Then I heard it. A dragging sound, slow, deliberate, like something heavy being pulled across the floor. My breath hitched. I took a step back, then click, the peephole in his door darkened. He was watching me. I turned and rushed back to my apartment, locking the door behind me. My hands were shaking. I forced myself to breathe. Maybe I was imagining things. Maybe I was letting paranoia get to me. But then came the knocking. Soft at first. A slow, deliberate tap. 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 Then harder. I stood frozen in the middle of my apartment. My phone was on the counter, too far to reach without making noise. The knocking stopped, a silence so thick it felt like the walls were closing in. Then, just as I let out the breath I was holding, scratch. A long, deliberate scrape. Against my door, slow, testing. I couldn't move. I could barely think. Then I heard it, his breathing. Low, uneven, just on the other side. Then he whispered, "I know you smell it." My stomach twisted into a knot. My vision blurred. I gripped the edge of the counter to keep from collapsing. Minute passed, then 2. Then, footsteps. Slow, shuffling steps moving away from my door. I should have called the police. I should have left. But I was rooted in place, my mind screaming at me to make sense of what just happened. And then, through the vent, a voice, not his, a woman's voice. Weak, pleading. Please, help me. I had to do something, but I had no idea the horror that was waiting for me next. I don't remember unlocking my door. I don't remember stepping into the hallway barefoot, heart hammering against my ribs. All I remember is that voice, thin, broken, begging through the vents. Please, help me. I stood outside his apartment, my fingers trembling as I gripped the doorknob. It was unlocked. It shouldn't have been. A sour wave of nausea hit me as I pushed it open. The smell inside was unbearable. Thick, putrid, wrong. It clung to the back of my throat, made my eyes water. The apartment was dark, only a single lamp flickering in the living room, casting twisted shadows along the walls. The place was empty. No furniture, no TV, nothing but an old mattress in the corner and a thick black tarp covering part of the floor. And the stains. Dark, smeared stains. Then I saw the vent. A large one, screwed into the wall near the floor. Too large. Large enough for something, or someone, to be behind it. My breath came in shallow gasps as I crouched down. The metal was rusted, streaked with grime. My fingers trembled as I gripped the edges. I shouldn't have opened it, but I did. The moment the cover came loose, something shifted inside. A damp, suffocating heat hit my face. Then I saw her, curled in the darkness, her body half hidden in the crawl space, eyes wide and unblinking. Her skin was waxy, stretched tight over her bones, lips cracked, hands trembling as she reached toward me. "He's coming back," she croaked, her voice barely more than a breath. My stomach dropped. I turned toward the door and froze. He was there, standing in the doorway, watching. His pale lips curled into something that wasn't a smile. "You shouldn't have done that." I didn't think. I grabbed her wrist, yanked her toward me. She was weak, so goddamn weak, but she clung to me like her life depended on it, because it did. Then he moved. I barely had time to react before he lunged, a flash of something sharp in his hand. I threw myself backward, dragging her with me. We hit the floor hard. My head slammed against the wood. Pain, blinding pain. He was on top of me, his breath hot against my face, the stink of rotting meat pouring from his mouth. The knife came down, but she moved first. With the last of her strength, she sank her teeth into his arm. He let out a howl, inhuman, guttural. I didn't hesitate. I grabbed the lamp, swung it with everything I had. The base connected with a sickening crack. He dropped. I didn't wait to see if he was getting up. I grabbed her, half dragging, half carrying her out the door, down the hall, through the stairwell. I don't remember running. I don't remember the cold air hitting my face as we burst onto the street, screaming for help. I only remember the sirens. They found 6 more bodies in the crawl space. He had been doing this for years. Women, mostly. No family, no connections. Just gone. Forgotten. Left to rot inside the walls. They took him away in cuffs, but he never stopped smiling. Even when they shoved him into the back of the cop car, even when they locked him up, he just kept smiling. Like he knew something. I didn't. Like this wasn't over. And maybe it isn't. Because sometimes in the dead of night, when the world is quiet, and the shadows are long, I still hear knocking. Tap, tap, tap. The first time I saw him, I thought my mind was playing tricks on me. It was late, past midnight. I had been tossing and turning in bed, restless, my apartment too quiet, too still. I rolled over, eyes heavy with exhaustion. And that's when I saw it, a shadow, standing outside my window. My apartment is on the 3rd floor. My chest seized. I shot upright, my heart hammering against my ribs. The room was dim, my curtains barely drawn, but the shape was unmistakable, tall, unmoving, watching. I didn't move, didn't breathe. 1,000 thoughts flooded my brain. A burglar? No, impossible. No fire escape, no ledge, just smooth concrete and empty air. A trick of the light? Maybe. Maybe. I blinked. The shadow was gone. The rush of blood in my ears was deafening. I forced a laugh, shaky and hollow, reaching for my phone. No notifications, no missed calls, just the blinking 1:37 a.m. on the screen. I told myself it was nothing. I was wrong. The next night, I made sure to lock everything, double-checked the windows, pulled the curtains tight. But when I turned off the lights and slipped under the covers, that feeling crept back in. That horrible, skin-crawling sensation of being watched. I told myself not to look. I looked, and there he was. Not outside. Inside. Standing in the corner of my bedroom, half hidden in the shadows. I couldn't scream. I couldn't move. Just like the night before, he was motionless, his features blurred by the darkness, but I could feel his eyes on me, boring into my skin like hot needles. I reached for my phone, my fingers shaking so badly I nearly dropped it. My vision blurred, my body frozen in place, but I managed to flick on the flashlight. Nothing. The corner was empty. I sat there panting, my entire body drenched in cold sweat. My mind screamed at me to get out, to leave, but where would I go? What would I even say? There's something in my apartment, but only when the lights are off? No one would believe me. Hell, I didn't even believe myself. But I should have, because this was only the beginning. I didn't sleep that night. Every shadow in my apartment felt wrong, like something was hiding inside them, waiting. I left the lights on until dawn, but the feeling didn't leave. It clung to my skin, thick and suffocating, an invisible weight, pressing down on me. By morning, I'd convinced myself that I was just exhausted. Sleep deprivation could do that, right? Hallucinations, paranoia. I just needed rest. I didn't go to work. I barely ate. I just sat there, staring at the corner where I had seen him, waiting for something to happen. Nothing did. For 2 nights. Then, on the 3rd night, I woke up to the sound of my closet door creaking open. My stomach turned to ice. I lay there, frozen, my breath caught in my throat. The air in my room felt thicker, heavier, like something unseen had just slithered in. He was there, not in the window, not in the corner, closer. I didn't want to look. I couldn't. But my body betrayed me. My head turned, slow, unwilling, and my eyes locked onto the closet door. It was open just enough to see the darkness inside, and a shape, tall, thin, twisted. The dim glow of the streetlights barely touched his form, but I saw fingers, long, too many of them, gripping the edge of the door frame, and a face almost human, peering from the darkness, mouth slightly parted like it was about to speak. I snapped. I bolted out of bed, fumbling for the lamp. My hands were slick with sweat, slipping over the switch. Click. Light flooded the room, and he was gone. The closet door was open, but there was nothing inside. No footprints. No signs of anyone ever being there. Just my own ragged breathing and the crushing weight of dread settling into my chest. I couldn't stay there. I grabbed my keys, my phone, and I ran. I didn't even put on shoes. I sprinted, down 3 flights of stairs out into the night, sucking in the cold air like I had been drowning. But I wasn't alone. As I reached my car, I felt it. That same feeling. Eyes. Watching me. I turned. My bedroom window was dark. The curtains were still drawn, but in the apartment next to mine, there he was, standing in the window. But he wasn't alone. There were dozens of them, pale faces pressed against the glass, hollow eyes staring down at me, motionless. I backed away, my legs barely holding me, a bile rising in my throat. My mind screamed run, but my body wouldn't move, and then, the lights in my apartment flickered on. The closet door was still open, and something inside was waiting. I never went back. I broke my lease, packed what little I could in broad daylight, and left without looking back. I don't know who or what was in that apartment, but sometimes, when I pass a building late at night, I glance up at the windows, and sometimes they're there, watching, waiting. I pray they never find me again, but deep down, I know they will, because once you see them, they never stop seeing you. I never used to lock my doors. I know how stupid that sounds, but growing up in a small town makes you feel invincible. Everyone knew everyone, and crime was just something that happened on the news, never in our quiet little neighborhood. That changed the night I saw the man standing in my backyard. At first I thought it was just a trick of the light. I had been up late, scrolling mindlessly on my phone in the dim glow of my bedroom. But then, out of the corner of my eye, I caught movement, a dark figure half hidden by the tree line, standing unnaturally still, watching. A slow, suffocating dread wrapped around my chest. I told myself it was just a shadow, maybe a deer. But deep down, I knew. This was different. I moved carefully, trying not to let my silhouette show against the bedroom window. My house was old, the wooden floorboards groaning beneath me as I stepped closer. I reached for the curtain just enough to peek through. He was still there. Closer now. My breath caught in my throat. He wasn't just standing, he was facing my window. His posture was unnatural, stiff, like he was waiting for something. The porch light cast just enough illumination to catch the outline of his face. Pale, hollow eyes locked onto mine. I stumbled back, heart hammering. My mind raced through every possible explanation, some drunk neighbor, a lost stranger, but nothing justified the sheer wrongness of the way he stood there, unblinking, unmoving. Then, as if he knew I was watching, he tilted his head, a slow, deliberate motion. My stomach churned. The phone. I needed my phone. Fumbling in the dark, I grabbed it from my nightstand and dialed 911 with shaking fingers. What's your emergency? There's a man in my yard, I whispered, barely able to get the words out. He's just standing there, staring. The dispatcher's voice was calm, routine, as if she had heard this 1,000 times before. Can you describe him? I forced myself to look again. But he was gone. The yard was empty. I blinked, my pulse roaring in my ears. He was just there. I swear, he was right there. The dispatcher sighed. "Ma'am, are you alone in the house?" "Yes." My voice was barely audible. "Are all your doors locked?" I turned toward the hallway, the front door, the back door, the windows. My blood turned to ice. I never used to lock my doors, but I damn well was going to now. I moved through the house like a ghost, my breath shallow, my fingers ice cold as they hovered over the deadbolt. Click. I locked the front door. My hands trembled as I tested the handle, twice. Then I ran to the back door. Click. The windows. One by one I latched them shut, my own reflection staring back at me from the glass, wide-eyed, horrified. The house felt different now. Smaller. Like the walls were closing in. I gripped my phone like a lifeline, the dispatcher's voice distant in my ear. "Officers are on their way. Stay inside. Stay calm." Stay calm? I turned off every light, plunging myself into darkness. If I couldn't see him, maybe he couldn't see me. I stood there, heart pounding in the silence. Nothing. Maybe he really was gone. Maybe I had imagined the whole thing. And then, scratch. A slow, deliberate sound, like nails dragging across wood. I froze. It was coming from the back door. My stomach twisted into knots, a sickening dread curling up my spine. The sound came again, longer this time, the unmistakable screech of something sharp grazing against the surface. He was still there, but he wasn't knocking. He wasn't trying the handle. He was waiting. I couldn't breathe. My instincts screamed at me to run, but where? There was nowhere safe. I pressed my back against the wall, clutching my phone like it could somehow save me. Then, thud. A heavy impact rattled the door. My entire body jolted. Thud. Harder this time. The frame groaned. Under the pressure, I bit down on a whimper. Jesus Christ, what does he want? The dispatcher's voice snapped me back to reality. Ma'am, are you still there? My throat was dry. He's at the back door. Officers are close. Don't engage. Just stay hidden. Stay hidden. The thuds stopped. Silence pressed against my ears, thick and suffocating. For a moment I thought maybe he had given up. Then, a new sound. A slow creak from inside the house. My blood ran cold. The back door was still shut, locked. But he was inside. I wasn't alone anymore. I couldn't move, couldn't think. My mind refused to accept what I had just heard. The back door was locked, the windows were shut. But I wasn't alone anymore. A floorboard creaked in the hallway. It was slow, intentional. My breath hitched. Every nerve in my body screamed at me to run, to do something. But I stood frozen in the dark, my heart hammering so violently I was sure he could hear it. I forced myself to move. Step by step, silent as I could, I backed toward my bedroom. My phone was still in my hand, the dispatcher's voice a distant buzz in my ear. Ma'am, are you there? I barely breathed the words. He's inside. Another creak. Closer. I reached the bedroom door, but the second my fingers touched the knob, bang! The sound of something heavy slamming against the hallway wall. My stomach twisted as I realized he wasn't sneaking anymore. He was letting me know. I shut the door, locked it, stepped back, my entire body trembling, then tap, tap, tap. I turned to the closet. The sound wasn't coming from the hallway anymore. It was coming from inside my room. I let out a ragged breath, my fingers tightening around my useless phone. I wanted to scream, but the sound got caught in my throat. The tapping on the closet door was slow, patient, like he was toying with me. And then, in the silence, a whisper. I know you're awake. I snapped. Pure blind terror took over. I lunged for the window, hands fumbling with the lock, adrenaline making me clumsy. The closet door creaked open behind me. I didn't look. I shoved the window up and threw myself outside, hitting the ground, hard. My knees scraped against the pavement, but I didn't stop. I ran, barefoot, breathless, I ran. Behind me, I heard the front door swing open, but I didn't look back. The flashing lights of a police car turned the street blue and red, and suddenly, strong hands were grabbing me, voices shouting. I gasped for air, my whole body shaking, my mind struggling to keep up. The officers stormed into my house. I clung to one of them, sobbing, trying to tell them what happened. Minutes passed. Then one of the officers came out, his face pale. There's no one in there, he said. No, I croaked, shaking my head. No, I heard him. I saw. He held up a hand. But we did find something. I followed his gaze as he gestured toward my bedroom window. My stomach twisted into knots. Scratched into the glass, deep and jagged, were 3 words. See you soon. I should have never moved into this house. The first time I saw it, I thought it was perfect. Quaint, tucked away in a quiet neighborhood in Pennsylvania. The kind of place where people nod politely as they pass, but don't ask too many questions. That suited me just fine. I wasn't looking to make friends. I just wanted a fresh start, somewhere to clear my head. But I should have known. Something was off from the start. It wasn't the house itself. No, the place was old, sure, but charming in its own way. It was the feeling, the thick, invisible weight that settled on my chest the moment I stepped inside. The silence here wasn't normal. It wasn't peaceful. It was expectant, like the house was holding its breath, waiting. I brushed it off as paranoia. Moving alone for the first time can mess with your head, right? That's what I told myself. Then I met him. I was unpacking late that first night when I saw movement. Outside, just a shadow in the window across the street. My nearest neighbor, I assumed. An old man, standing in the second-story window staring directly at me. He didn't move. He didn't even blink. Just watched. I forced a smile and lifted my hand in a small wave. Nothing. Creepy, sure. But maybe he was just nosy. Small town. Folks tend to be. I shut the blinds and tried to focus on organizing my things, but I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. That thick, crawling sensation on the back of my neck. I tried to sleep that night, but I kept waking up. Heart pounding. The image of that man burned into my brain. By the time dawn broke, I was exhausted and irritable, but determined to shake it off. I had to. That morning, I decided to introduce myself. Get ahead of the awkwardness. Maybe he was just lonely. Maybe I was reading too much into it. But when I crossed the street and knocked on the door, no one answered. I waited, listening. No shuffling, no TV, no sign of life at all. I knocked again, harder this time. Still nothing. Then I felt it. That unbearable prickling at the base of my skull. I turned slowly, heart slamming against my ribs, and looked up at the window. He was there. Standing. Staring. But now he was smiling. A smile too wide. Too wrong. I stumbled back, my stomach twisting into knots. The door behind me never opened. The house remained silent. But the man in the window, he lifted a single skeletal hand, and he waved. I ran back to my house, slamming the door behind me, my breath coming in sharp, uneven gasps. My hands trembled as I locked the deadbolt, my mind racing with explanations. Maybe I was overreacting. Maybe the man was just strange. But that smile, that impossible, too wide grin, I couldn't shake it. The way his teeth seemed too numerous, his lips stretching like something that wasn't used to smiling. I spent the rest of the day trying to ignore it. I unpacked, played music, even watched TV at full volume just to drown out the gnawing unease. By nightfall, I convinced myself I had imagined the whole thing until I heard the knock. It was soft at first. A light tap, tap, tap against glass. I froze, my body locking up in pure animal terror. It was coming from my bedroom window. My bedroom, on the second floor. I turned my head slowly, every nerve in my body screaming at me not to look. But I did. Of course I did. And there he was, pressed against the glass. His face was impossibly close, his forehead nearly touching the window pane, his grin even wider than before. His teeth. God, his teeth looked jagged, uneven, like they had been filed down to knives. His skin, pale and stretched too tight over sharp cheekbones, twitched as if something underneath was shifting. And his eyes, black, endless pits. I scrambled, backward, my pulse hammering so hard I thought my ribs would crack. My body screamed at me to run, to do anything but stand there frozen in terror, but I couldn't move. He raised his hand again, and he knocked. Tap, tap, tap. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. My brain refused to process what I was seeing. That window was over 10 feet off the ground. There was no ledge, no tree, no way anyone could be standing there. And yet he was. His fingers dragged down the glass, leaving behind streaks of something dark, something viscous. Blood? No. Something worse. Then, without breaking eye contact, his mouth opened. Too wide, too wrong, and he whispered something against the glass. I didn't hear it. I felt it, a cold, seeping horror that slithered into my bones, twisting around my spine like a parasite. It wasn't words. Not really. It was something deeper. Something ancient. I did the only thing I could. I grabbed the curtains and ripped them shut, my fingers shaking so hard I could barely hold on. Silence. Nothing. I stood there, panting, my body drenched in cold sweat. Minutes passed, maybe hours, I don't know, but eventually, I had to check. I shouldn't have. With every ounce of courage I had left, I pulled the curtain back, just an inch. The window was empty. But on the glass, smeared in that thick, dark substance, was a message. Let me in. I stumbled backward, my vision tunneling, my breath coming in ragged gasps. My skin felt wrong, like it wasn't mine anymore, like something else was pressing against it, trying to crawl inside. The message on the window dripped, thick and black, as if it was alive. I didn't sleep that night. How could I? I sat curled up on the floor, facing the window, waiting for that sound again. That knock, that whisper. But it never came. Not that night. Not the next. Days passed. I convinced myself I had imagined it. Sleep deprivation, stress. The mind plays tricks when it's exhausted. I even considered knocking on my neighbor's door again, demanding an explanation. But something inside me whispered, "Don't." I listened. I should have left. I should have packed my things and run. Instead, I made one mistake. The worst mistake of my life. I let my guard down. It was almost a week later when I heard it again. Not at the window this time. At the front door. 3 soft knocks. Tap, tap, tap. The air in the house shifted, thickening like molasses pressing against my lungs. Every instinct I had screamed at me not to move, to pretend I wasn't home, but then I heard it. A voice. Low. Familiar. "Hey, it's me. Your neighbor." I stopped breathing. That voice, it didn't sound like the man in the window. It sounded normal, curious, even a little confused. "Sorry if I scared you the other night," the voice continued. I don't get many visitors. Just thought I'd introduce myself." My body screamed at me to stay still. But what if I'd been wrong? What if he really was just some lonely old man, maybe sick, maybe misunderstood? I reached for the door. My fingers barely grazed the handle when, bang! Something slammed against the door so hard the whole frame shuddered. I stumbled backward, choking on a scream. Then, the voice changed. It wasn't human anymore. It was wet, slurred, too many voices speaking at once. "Let me in." I backed away, shaking my head. "No, no, no, no." The door handle rattled violently. Scratching noises crawled up the wood like claws. Then, the worst sound of all. Laughter. Thick, guttural, hungry laughter. I ran. I didn't grab anything. I didn't turn off the lights. I just ran. Out the back door, into the freezing night, down the empty street. I didn't stop, not until I reached my car, not until I was miles away. I never went back. I didn't even sell the house. I let the bank take it, but sometimes even now. I wake up in the middle of the night. I hear a sound. Tap, tap, tap against the window, and I know I never really left. Some places just feel wrong. It's not something you can explain, not really. It's like a low hum in the back of your skull, a twisting feeling in your stomach that tells you shouldn't be here, that you need to leave. But sometimes, you don't have a choice. I had just moved into a small apartment in Ohio, a cheap one-bedroom unit in an old building that smelled like dust and something damp. I didn't care. It was what I could afford. A fresh start. That's what I kept telling myself. The hallway was the first thing that unnerved me. It was long, narrow, and always too dark, even when the overhead lights were on. The bulbs flickered, constantly, casting sickly yellow shadows against the peeling wallpaper. My unit was at the very end, next to an apartment that had no number on the door. I didn't think much of it at first. Maybe it was empty. Maybe the landlord just never bothered to replace the number. But on my first night, as I was carrying the last of my boxes inside, I heard something from the other side of that door. A slow, scraping sound, like nails dragging down wood. I froze, my breath hitching in my throat. It wasn't loud, barely more than a whisper of movement, but it was deliberate. Someone was in there. I swallowed hard and forced myself to move. New neighbor, I thought. Nothing weird about that. But when I turned to head into my apartment, I heard something else. A whisper. Not from the apartment, from the hallway, right behind me. I spun around, heart hammering. Nothing. Just the dim, flickering lights and the long stretch of empty hallway leading to the stairwell. I swallowed the lump in my throat and stepped inside my apartment, locking the door behind me. I told myself it was my imagination, that moving stress was getting to me. I should have left that night, but I didn't. I stayed, and by the time I realized what was really happening, it was too late. That first night, I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I swore I could hear it. Breathing, not mine, not from inside my apartment. It was coming from the hallway, long wheezing inhales, shallow, wet exhales, like something with ruined lungs was crouched just outside my door waiting. I pulled the blankets over my head, my pulse hammering in my ears. Ignore it. Just ignore it. Maybe it was a neighbor. Maybe the pipes. Maybe... Then, 3 soft knocks. Tap, tap, tap. I stopped breathing. The knocks weren't normal. They weren't impatient or polite or even curious. They were... testing. Like someone pressing their fingers against the surface of a balloon, just to see how much pressure it could take. Before it popped, I reached for my phone with trembling hands. 2:37 a.m. I knew. If I looked through the peephole, I would see something I could never unsee. So I didn't. I sat in bed, clutching my phone, and waited. Minutes passed. Then, the doorknob turned. I clamped my hand over my mouth to keep from screaming. It was locked. It was locked. It was locked. Something pressed against the wood. A slow, shuffling sound, like whatever was out there was dragging itself along the length of the door, smelling me through the cracks. Then, a whisper. Not a voice. Not words. Just a sound. Like the dry rustling of leaves, but wet. A decayed, rotting noise that burrowed its way into my bones and settled there. I don't know how long I sat frozen like that, my body locked in terror, my mind begging for morning to come. But eventually, it left. I don't remember falling asleep, but I must have because I woke to the sound of my phone alarm blaring. The morning light spilled through the blinds, and for a few brief seconds I thought I had imagined the whole thing. Then I saw it. The door. Something had scraped across it in the night, Deep, jagged lines gouged into the wood like a set of twisted, bony fingers had traced their way along the surface. And at the bottom, just near the crack where the floor met the doorframe, there was a smudge of something black and oily. Something that wasn't there before. Something that shouldn't exist, and I knew, with a certainty that settled like ice in my stomach, it would be back. I didn't go to work that day. I couldn't. I just sat at my kitchen table staring at the door, my body locked in a state of horrified anticipation. The scratches, the black stain, the thing that had been there in the dark, whispering to me. I knew it wasn't over. I thought about leaving, grabbing my keys, getting in my car, and never coming back. But something in me knew that wouldn't work. It wasn't just in the hallway anymore. It was waiting for me. That night, I didn't even try to sleep. I sat upright in bed, phone clutched in my hand, waiting, listening. And right at 2:37 a.m., tap, tap, tap. My throat closed. The knocks were lower this time, closer to the floor, like something was crouching. Then the breathing started, not outside. My door, inside my apartment, right behind me. The air turned thick, wet, wrong. Every nerve in my body screamed, "Don't turn around." But I had to. I turned my head just an inch, and the door burst open. Not my front door. The door to my closet. The light flickered once, then everything went black. I don't remember screaming. I don't remember running. I woke up in the stairwell of my building, hands bleeding, my voice raw like I had been crying or begging or both. My apartment door was wide open behind me. The lights inside flickered, casting long, shuddering shadows against the walls, and the closet door was still ajar. The air around it warped, as if something just beyond my line of sight was watching. Waiting. I left everything behind. I ran to my car, drove for hours with no destination, just distance. I don't know what was in that apartment. I don't want to know. But sometimes, when I'm lying in bed in some new place miles away, I hear it again. Tap, 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 and I know. It found me. If you've survived this far and you're one of those who love fear and terror, then don't waste any time. I kindly ask you to subscribe to the channel and activate the notification bell so you don't miss any content. The video you're watching on screen is just a taste of what's coming. Watch it. Thank you for being here, and see you next time, if you're capable of handling what's to come.